Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hello everyone and welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, the show where you get your property questions in, and sometimes non-property, but today we have 2 property questions and we do our very, very best to answer them. And luckily that format has worked for quite a number of shows now and it isn't stopping this week. So let's give you a quick reminder of how you can get involved and get your question in to the show.
Yep, there's one number to remember, which is 013 808 00035. That's 013 808 00035. And you can leave us a voicemail. Or if remembering a phone number is a bit of a stretch, and it certainly would be for me, then you can go to propertyhub.net/ask and leave us your voicemail there instead. And by doing so, you will not only be getting your question answered, but you'll be following in the fine footsteps of Matt.
Hi Rob and Rob, my name's Matt, I'm based in South Devon. Using Rob's books and both of your podcasts, I've managed to develop a portfolio which is continuing to grow, so thanks ever so much for your content and what you do there. I've noticed recently in the press about Lloyds Bank and John Lewis and various other people getting into lettings in a big way, talking of maybe numbers of 50,000, etc. Didn't know what your opinions were on this and how you think that might affect the likes of you and I as private landlords. Keen to hear your thoughts. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for your question. And what a lovely part of the world you live in. You're right. There are some big corporations moving in to the residential property sector. And this is more of a continuation of a trend that's been going on for a little while now, because pension companies have been moving in and buying up lots and lots of property. Not many people know that, but we have talked about it on the podcast. And it seems other big corporations are looking at it and go, you know what, we want a piece of that as well. Branching out from their core services, these mega companies branching out into different things. So as a property investor, how should you feel? Well, we can look at history and recent history to teach us what tends to happen when big companies go into property, because this actually has happened in the student market. The student market was very fruitful for the landlords who participated, and the service levels that they had to deliver to generate nice profits was minimal. Not every landlord offered a poor product and service, but many, many did. And large corporations saw an opportunity. They moved in. They built huge blocks for students with amazing facilities, much better standard of living, and the students flocked to those properties. The landlords that remained in that sector had to pull their socks up and try harder, which many did, and they still operate in that market, although many landlords exited that market. So ultimately, it was good for tenants. It wasn't great for all landlords, but it was fine for landlords who were prepared to put a bit of effort in. So sitting here recording this, I feel quite comfortable with that. Overall, tenants won and best landlords stuck in the market. And now these corporations are moving into residential buy-to-let. The big difference here, though, is it's a much, much bigger market. And it will take a long time and more than just Lloyds Bank and John Lewis and pension companies to come in before you feel like you've got real competition. But tenants will see these blocks, will like the service and the flexibility that often comes with living in these type of units, and feel, you know what, that is a better option for me. So as a landlord listening to this, or a potential landlord in the future, you should be now thinking, okay, so if I'm going to let out property moving forward, what can I be doing now to up my standards? What can I be doing now to make it more attractive? That answer will be different depending on who you're targeting and where your properties are. But things like broadband thrown in for free, for example, may be a nice one to have. Being more flexible with the lease terms you're willing to offer. Making sure the property is done to a really nice standard. You know, it's not looking tired. There are different ways and different approaches. So overall, it's a good thing for the sector because I don't think it's going to trample the small landlords and push them out the way. But I do think it'll make people take notice and up the standards overall. And I think tenants will win.
Yes, they will. And the positive way of looking at this is it's a real vote of confidence for the residential property sector. The fact that companies are getting involved means that they believe in the long-term prospects of property. And despite all the headaches that go along with being a landlord, they're willing to do it because of the long-term inflation-linked income stream that they can generate. And while capital values might not be the main thing on their mind, they're clearly comfortable with the level that prices are at and the prospects there as well. I think it's worth saying as well that while build to rent started out as being a city centre phenomenon with big modern blocks of 200 plus units, it is already starting to spread out into other types of properties. You're seeing a lot more suburban build to rent. And that, I believe, from what we've seen, is going to accelerate in the coming years. So it's not the case that you're not going to have this kind of competition if you're in a more suburban location. But still, that doesn't mean that you're going to get pushed out, because that market is absolutely enormous. Even if a company comes in and buys 50,000 units, it sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's still an absolute drop in the bucket in the big scheme of things. So it's not going to radically change the landscape. But as you said, Rob, it might be a little nudge to keep an eye on your competition and make sure that you are well positioned.
And the good news, Matt, and everyone else who's interested in this, we've got a YouTube video coming very soon that will cover this subject and look at your competition in more depth. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, make sure you are, and there's a little notification bell you can turn on. Make sure you turn that bell on, whether you're subscribed or not, because you'll get alerted to when this video goes live. So make sure you do that. And of course, it's worth mentioning, just in case you missed the massive reveal on Thursday, that portfolio is going to take on the likes of John Lewis, Lloyds Bank, and the pension companies we've mentioned. So if you really want to fight that competition, check out Portfolio. That's another way of doing it. That's letting the individuals still compete against those big corporations. So it's an exciting time for property. It's an exciting time for the technology that we're bringing forward with Portfolio. And if you want to find out more about that, check out portfolio.co.uk.
All right, let's move on to our second question now. This one comes in from Ben.
Hi, Rob and Rob. Thanks for all the interesting and insightful content. It's really helped my wife and I engage with our accidental buy-to-let and hopefully to get another buy-to-let in the near future. Our questions around our accidental buy-to-let, which we purchased back in 2005. It's an ex-council block made out of precast reinforced concrete, and we did buy with a mortgage at the time. But when we moved out in 2011, it was no longer mortgageable due to a problem, as we thought, with the concrete. There's now been a lot of money and work put into fixing that problem. We have an EWS1 certificate. However, we've now been through the process of trying to remortgage, and every time it gets to the value, at the point of the value we're going out, they say it's made from precast reinforced concrete and value it at nil. And we're just wondering if there's any lenders who would lend on such a building, and if not, any lobbying that's going on to the government to put pressure on lenders to start lending on these that we could maybe follow or add our voice to. That would be much appreciated. Any kind of general points you have to make on PRC buildings would be really interesting, because there doesn't seem to be much that we can find on it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Ben, because if this is something we've covered on the podcast before, it hasn't been for a very, very long time. And I'm glad we get the chance to do so now, because there will be other people in your position. So concrete construction is an example of what lenders refer to as non-standard construction. And any type of construction that is non-standard is harder to get mortgages on. Not impossible, but harder. Concrete construction in particular, lenders are wary about, because historically there have been some issues with properties that are made in this way. Now, like you said, in the case of your property, you've had remedial work done and it's now been fixed. And indeed, that is the case with most properties of concrete construction. There are some properties that had issues, but that was a long time ago. It's now clear which ones those are, and where work needs to be done, for the most part, it's been done. But because of that historical issue, lenders are still wary. And the reason for their wariness is ultimately that property is the security against the money that they've loaned to you. And they're concerned that if any problems with the property's construction come to light, then that's going to mean that their security is going to be worth less, or potentially they won't be able to sell the property to recover their money if you default on the loan. So effectively, it's another layer of risk for lenders. And that means that many of them have policies where they just say no. The key here, and we say this often, is to work with a really good specialist mortgage broker. Because while many lenders have a policy of saying no to concrete construction, that's not the case with all of them. And the issue that you've described really shouldn't be happening. The issue where valuers are going out and saying, oh, it's concrete construction, no, nil value. That shouldn't happen, because the broker should be telling the lender what the deal is with the construction at the very, very start. So if the lender's going to say no, they say no on day one, and they don't even bother sending a valuer out and wasting time and money. So hopefully a good broker will be able to find you a mortgage option. But of course, because there are fewer players in the market, there aren't as many options, you probably are going to be looking at a higher borrowing rate than you would be for a different type of property. But once you know, then you'll know what your options are. You can decide whether that rate is worth it to you, and you can move on from there. So Ben, like I said, thank you for asking the question. Really glad to cover this on the podcast, and good luck with getting your mortgage.
So thank you, Matt. Thank you, Ben. And thank you for listening. Remember, 2 tasks on your list. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you go and do that now and turn on that notification bell so you can get those upcoming videos that are heading your way. And check out portfolio.co.uk for more information. And if you're still thinking, what is that? Then go and listen to Thursday's podcast where we reveal all. We'll be back on Thursday for the property podcast. And of course, same time next week for Ask Rob and Rob. So until then, take care, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.